What's good, everybody? Welcome in to the Early Edge in our Week 17. Can you believe it? Our Week 17 NFL Mega Preview. There are no more buys. There are no more excuses. It's about who wants to get into the playoffs and play for a Super Bowl and who does not. By the way, my man, another Jewish Sharp says, so happy when I make this show. These guys are great. We're happy when you make this show, too. We're happy when all of you make the show, whether you watch it live or on demand. Make sure you watch this show. It is so important. And the biggest reason, or the two biggest reasons, let's bring them in right now. First and foremost, live from Nashville, Tennessee. Oh, M Squared. Can you believe we got 2 weeks left? That's it until the playoffs.
2 weeks left until the playoffs in the middle of bowl season as well. Yeah, it's a fun time of the year. We get to dissect which games matter, which ones don't over the next 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And we're going to do it here shortly. Now, this man runs everything NFL at SportsLine. We can't do it without him. He is the stoic one, R.J. White. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy we don't have to watch the Colts in prime time again this year. That was some horrific stuff. I think it was the second time in 4 weeks they've been in prime time, and please get them off my TV forever. They're terrible. But excited to talk football here. Week 17, still getting used to the fact that we have a week 18 and this is not the final week of the season. Season now extends into January. So a little bit weird for us, but we're getting used to it.
All right, and we will be just fine. Blue Line Haas says, what up, coach? And the best team in the nation. Hashtag Who Day. Who Day to you, too. All right, let's jump right in, gentlemen. We've got one Thursday night. We got 9 1 o'clock games on Sunday, 4 at 4, then Sunday Night Football, and Monday night. That adds up to 16 games, but the first two teams that are going to play, and Mikey, I'm going to start with you. This is kind of a weird situation for the Cowboys. They played several games this year on Thursday, and they have another one on Thursday. They're traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans. The number right now sits at 10. That's because Ryan Tannehill's out. Total sitting at 41. With the Cowboys already into the playoffs, but positioning is still a thing for them, I guess. What do you make of this line?
Yeah, this one is really, really tough. I think the line's about where it should be in this spot. However, you couldn't convince me to bet on this game. I want zero part of it. On one side, you've got the Cowboys already in. Seeding matters a little bit still. And then on the Titans side, not a lot to play for here in this game. Doesn't really matter too much the result of this game for them. All they care about is week 18 and the head-to-head matchup against Jacksonville. They've got Derrick Henry banged up a little bit. I don't expect Derrick Henry to play in this game. There's just a lot going on here. Far too much for me to want to invest in this one because we don't know the motivation too much on the Dallas side. They should win this game pretty easily. As far as covering this big number, not going to mess with it. It's never fun to say we're passing on a game completely, especially a standalone primetime game. But personally, that's where I'm at on this one. You couldn't pay me to bet on this game.
It may be a night of opportunities, as we like to say. Now, Mikey, you hit on a couple of very, very important nuggets. RJ, we rarely look at the team that doesn't have anything to play for in week 17, but does in week 18. It doesn't normally happen like this, but it does for the Titans. So Mikey's point is very, very valid and important. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it is. There is some motivation factor for the Cowboys. They could still get the number 1 seed, and they can't take for granted that they won't win the division with Philly's number 1 quarterback still injured. So they have to play like we're going after the division. We're going after the number 1 seed, and I think they're going to play everyone. Titans don't have a ton to play for. They can rest guys. They have that luxury, knowing that whatever happens this week, they just have to worry about Jacksonville next week. Dallas' stock is high after beating Philly. Defense didn't play that well in that game. We didn't expect them to play well. They had a lot of injuries there. They are 21st in yards per rush, though. So if Tennessee wants to commit to the run, which, with their quarterback situation, you figure they will want to. They might be able to have some success there. Their offensive line can't pass block, though. So if you get in any pass situations, it's going to be hard for them to come back. Tennessee's defense generally great at defending the run, and we know the Dallas offense just refuses to get away from the run game ever. They're just committed to throwing 15 to 20 carries at Zeke every single game, plus what they give to Pollard. Tennessee's defense also number 1 on third downs. So if they are trying, Dallas's offense might not have the same success on third downs as they usually do. I don't want to lay this many points with the Cowboys on the road, even with the motivation factor for the Titans. So I would look to the under, if anything, but not playing the spread here.
All right. Well, of course, dissect this game up and down from all different sides on Early Edge Live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, as we always seem to do. And it seems like that's a good thing that we have to dissect this game closer to game time to really kind of see what we're feeling or what the coaching staffs are giving away, if anything. All right, let's move to Sunday now. And as I mentioned, 9 games at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Let's start with a game that just screams yuck. Cardinals traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. The Fighting Desmond Ritters laying for the total 41. The Cardinals have been an absolute mess. They're now apparently have a future Hall of Famer, McClure, because RJ, if you watch the game this past weekend, he was a superstar, according to the production team, not on the field. And now you've got 2 quarterbacks that have very little experience, starting experience. What do you make of this one?
Well, McSorley outplayed Tom Brady, which is more than I would have said going into that game, even with Tom Brady performing not that great this season. So I was a little bit impressed with what he did. Arizona has the rest disadvantage, and they played that overtime game. So I think this is a good spot for Atlanta just in general. Ritter actually did fine as a passer against Baltimore in tough conditions, was encouraged about that. But can you lay more than a field goal with a bad Atlanta team? I'm not sure you can. Arizona still fought against Tampa Bay, even though their season's over. Their defense did lose Budda Baker to a fractured shoulder, so they could have some regression there. This hinges on McCoy, though. If McCoy is back, I think the line should be on the other side of 3 because Atlanta doesn't have a great home field advantage. So if we get news that McCoy is going to play in this game, I'm going to be looking at the Cardinals.
Mikey, would you, and I know it does not fit into what we normally would tease, but if McCoy's back, obviously it would move a little bit. Somebody would have to be really on top of it. But would you tease the Cardinals up to 10 perhaps?
Probably not. I would wait. I know it takes a lot to think about that, but I would wait until the market says that it should be 2. If it gets to 2, then that's when you'd want to tease them. You don't want to tease them. It's difficult to grasp sometimes as a bettor, but you don't necessarily know more than the market. You want to wait for that strong signal. Right now it's telling you that it definitely needs to be more than 3 points. So you should typically listen to it in that particular spot. So I personally wouldn't tease it until it got down to 2 or 2.5 in this particular spot. Having said that, I do lean towards the Cardinals in this game at +4. Kind of like RJ said, I don't think that the Falcons with Ritter should be getting more or laying more than a field goal against other teams. It just comes down to motivation at this point. Not a lot to play for here for them. McSorley, maybe he's going to be able to go out there and manage it. You've got some emotion with Watt, announcing his retirement, things like that. It's difficult to handicap it there. At this current spot, it would be, lean towards the +4, lean towards the over, potentially watch the total closely. If you can get this thing down to 40.5, even 41's a pretty key number here in the NFL. Would lean over in the game. So I guess Cardinals and over leans, but nothing that screams must play with the information we have currently.
Yeah, remember when you were growing up, before you had experts like Mikey and RJ, and you got to week 17, and that's what we're at right now with 1 more week to go, and you just wanted to bet on every game because that's what you do. Now you're educated. Now you understand you don't have to, and the Thursday night game or this one, just stay away from it if you don't want to touch it. Just stay away. There's going to be plenty of games that we can play this week. Game number 2. 1 o'clock on Sunday, gentlemen. And this means a lot to one of the teams. I'm talking about the Detroit Lions. Mikey, I'm starting with you. They're laying 6 at home against the Chicago Bears. Total 52. Now, this could line up, Mikey, for a all-or-nothing Week 18 with the Packers at Lambeau, but the Lions need to take care of business this week. Last week, they didn't play well at all, getting blasted by the Panthers. How do they bounce back? Do you see them bouncing back?
Yeah, I can see them bouncing back here. You get them back on home field. That is certainly big for them, playing indoors in a controlled environment. On the other side, some concern around Justin Fields certainly helps the Lions' case here. Ultimately, I think they get the number. They get this win. It is a big number to cover. I think the number is basically correct. I have it at 6.2, so it's right there where I would make it. I could see the argument going all the way up to 7. If you want to lay that big number, I think it's fine. I think they escape with the win. So I would mostly be interested in a Lions money line paired with something else that you really like this weekend. But if you're determined to lay the point spread in this game, it would definitely be on the Lions side. I would not play the Bears.
Okay, but on the other side, RJ, if everybody watched the game last week, what did the Panthers do? They ran. Do you think that could be the game plan for the Bears, who have the best running quarterback in the NFL right now, taking snaps at center?
That's your game plan against everyone. So I'd be surprised if they didn't do anything, different from that. Detroit gave up 258 rush yards to Chicago early in the year. So this matchup could just be trouble for them. It was a face plan for Detroit against Carolina with that rush D. Completely fell apart. 30-yard rush to Hubbard to begin the game. And then he tacked on a 35-yard run. I believe he had like 3 carries, 70 yards on the first drive. Pretty incredible stuff when they had been playing really well against the run in the last few games. Chicago's defense has allowed 25 plus points in 8 straight. So I think the Detroit offense at home is going to score a bunch here. So I would lean to the over here. It's gone ticked up to 52. Even then, I think it's probably too low for these teams. The power ratings I have the line at 7, but I don't trust Detroit as much to stop a backdoor cover, especially now that there are some chinks in the armor here of that rush defense. So I'm more apt to play the over here than I am to lay it with Detroit.
There's no question this could be an absolute track meet and a ton of fun to watch. All right, game number 3. And Mikey, I got to start with you on this one because our Chiefs, yes, they're 11-3. Yes, they are competing for the number 1 seed, but against the spread, which is what this is a betting show. The last time I checked, they have been horrendous. But they did cover the big number last week against Seattle, although they had many chances not to. And then the Broncos come in with a new head coach or an interim head coach. They fire Hackett. They have a offensive lineman on the bench pushing, ripping because they're getting into a fight. Russell's not cooking. The Broncos are a mess, and this number is 13, and the total is 45 with all of the drama going on. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not going to bet it. I can tell you that for sure. They don't cover huge numbers here. Don't want to back the Broncos at this point in the season either. The simulation number on it is 15 on the Kansas City side. Not a significant edge in a game where there's no real motivation to cover the spread. It's simply win the game and move on. Mahomes somewhat chasing records. I think they're kind of out of reach at this point, but it's somewhat chasing. It's a comfortable spot for them. They're obviously at home. They're going to win the game. But once again, one of those numbers where I'm probably only interested in a first half bet if I was going to play it. But I wish I could get to it, but there's real issues on both sides here, especially with the Denver side. So I'm not going to touch anything in this game. It's not a lot of fun for you guys out there, but there's 6 games this week that in my humble opinion are absolutely unbettable. And this is one of them.
It may not be fun, but that's the reason we're here. Right? That's the reason we're here, because we're the experts and we want to make sure people understand, because these shows didn't exist back when we were coming up in 20s and 30s. So, yes, it's not fun, but it's smart. Thank you, Mikey, very much. Now, let me come over to you, because as we start to connect the dots, RJ, and we look at your team, the Bills, they're playing the Bengals this week. So there's a very real possibility that the Chiefs could have a 1-game edge as long as they take care of business. Do you think the Chiefs are thinking like that, and you're coming out today and they say, we got to play everybody all the time. We got to be motivated. They go to Vegas week 18, by the way. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think they're looking ahead like that. I think they're focused on Denver, considering they were, beating the tar out of Denver that first game, and then they let them back into the game by throwing a bunch of ugly interceptions. Denver's defense forced 3 picks in week 14. Turnovers make covering this big of a number hard. This line was 10 on the look ahead. It jumped 3.5 points after Denver's disaster against the Rams, come down a little bit to 13. I wanted to put it in at 13.5 on the Broncos side. I like the Broncos to cover here. I'm going to be a little stubborn and not put it in at 13, see if we can get that value back, because I think firing the coach helps. I mean, you have to be a disaster to get fired in the middle of your first season. And that's just what he was there. So I think there's going to be a good chance that they take a step forward. Professional coach in the building taking over. I know he's never been a head coach, but that didn't matter when Rich Bisaccia took over for the Raiders last year. He took them to the playoffs. So I wouldn't discount this guy just because he's not a name candidate that nobody knows. So I want to play the big dog in the first week with the interim coach in a situation where everybody in that building probably felt like the coaching at the top was not it and needed to be replaced anyway. Kansas City controlled the game against Seattle, but Mahomes matched his worst completion percentage of the year, so it's not like he played great in that game either. And with this total just at 45, even though it's a Chiefs game, it's telling you it's going to be more lower scoring, harder for them to cover a big number like 13. So I think everything kind of lines up to play Denver here. I'm just hoping to get a little bit better number than 13.
All right, we will wait until Sunday. Again, that game is at 1 o'clock. I don't know what the weather is going to be like. Could be a little chilly, but last week wasn't horrible. They could still play in that weather. All right, game number 4 at 1 o'clock on Sunday, and this is a big-time AFC East matchup. The Dolphins, if they win, could secure by the end of the day a playoff spot despite how bad they've been the last 4 weeks. They're traveling to New England. The Patriots have been a mess. Just a mess. Total 42. Patriots are favored by 2.5 here because Tua is in concussion protocol. So, Mikey, let me start with you because you like one side of this game. Which side is it?
Yeah, it's going to be the Patriots side here, -2.5. Look, they should have beat the Bengals last week. They fell apart there in the end of the final drive, but they at least were in the game late. They get to play at home. It's difficult, as the Bengals found out, to go in there and win games at this time of year at Foxborough. Now you get Miami without a quarterback, most likely. Tua in the concussion protocol. Many people calling for him to not play again this season. Miami on a massive losing streak. We've been betting against them. We bet on them to miss the playoffs a few weeks ago, +350. I'm still on the fade Miami train here personally. I think that New England can manage the game well enough. I think that Miami is going to be in trouble if the quarterback situation is in doubt personally. I don't think they have what it takes there. So I'm going to back the home team here at less than a field goal. I make this number -4.5.
All right. Currently, the Patriots are the 4 seed in the wild card race. Miami is the 3 seed. But, of course, that will change because a lot of these teams are going to be playing each other the next couple of weeks. So, RJ, let me come to you. You like the other side, but in a different way. Both of your bets could hit and might hit. What do you like?
Yeah, I'm obviously teasing the Dolphins up through the teaser alley 3, 4, 6, 7, get it up to +8.5 because it's just clear teaser spot. And I actually kind of like the Miami side anyway. I'm hoping to get it at 3. It was a nice rally by New England, especially the defense pitching a second half shutout, but that offense still scored 0 in the first half at home. So I'm a little bit worried about them. New England defense top 5 in sack rate and interception rate. So they could get home here against this Miami offense. But Tua coming off that horrendous second half, probably a head injury. I know people have examined on Twitter when he might have hurt his head and then played terrible after that. So then we get Teddy Bridgewater coming in. I actually didn't make the Dolphins a little bit that much lower in my power ratings with that substitution out. First of all, I didn't have them as high as I had them earlier in the year because Tua clearly had been playing at less than 100% anyway on the injuries he had already suffered. So I was already had them at a discount. And then you get Bridgewater, a capable quarterback coming in, replacing him. If he's the starter here, I'm not that worried about him not being able to execute this offense. He's very good at making reads, putting the ball where it needs to go, protecting the ball, not turning it over. So I think that they're still fine in that sense. I'm still not sold on the New England offense at all, but Miami's defense has allowed 31.5 points per game on the road. They are just terrible once they go on the road. And they're 29th in interception rate. Mac Jones has thrown 1 pick in his last 7 games. So New England's probably not turning the ball over. So that's a recipe for this to go over the number of 42 here. I'm leaning that way, probably going to play it at some point. But I think the line in general should be closer to pick 'em. It is a good spot for New England considering all that, though. So that's why I wanted to tease it instead.
All right. Very, very good. I love all that information on both sides of it. Again, we tell you all the time here at the Early Edge, take the information, then use it for yourself. And I want to make sure I'm very, very clear. Of the wild card teams, New England is 4th. It's Baltimore, the Chargers, Miami, New England, the Jets, then Tennessee. But a lot of 7s and 8s, a lot of 9s. So everything will shake out in the next 2 weeks, but the Patriots have to win. They have to win if they want to see the playoffs and have any chance of seeing the playoffs. All right, speaking of seeing the playoffs, how about the New York Giants? They need to lose both games, and the Packers need to win out, and then they would miss. But they're back at home. They're playing the Colts, who, as you said, RJ, don't ever let me see them in primetime ever again. They were atrocious last night. Nick Foles throwing interception after interception after interception. So they're laying 5, the total 39, and you like a side in this, and I'm guessing I know which one it is.
Yeah, it's going to be the Giants. I don't like laying a bunch of points with the Giants considering how they've played this year. Their offense came alive in a good matchup against Minnesota as expected. They almost won that game, lost to a 61-yard field goal at end of regulation, something that just seems to happen to the Giants more than anybody else in the league, which their fans can attest to, I'm sure. Indy playing out the string with Foles at quarterback. He hadn't had really any practice time with the team, and they just threw him in there. So that's probably why he played so poorly, wasn't on the same page with his receivers. But the Indy defense has also struggled in recent weeks. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to feast on this Indy offensive line. I don't see Indy scoring much at all in this game. They're a little bit screwed on the schedule, 2 fewer days rest because the Giants obviously played Saturday with most of the league in that big slate on Saturday. And then Indy's got to come in here coming off a Monday night game. Giants looking to lock up a playoff spot. This is a huge game for them. They're at Philly next. They don't, even with the backup quarterback, you don't want to have to go into Philly with your playoffs resting on that. So you take your huge coaching advantage, you scheme up something here, you beat a Colts team that's lifeless, that's listless, that I don't even know if they can bring the interim coach they want to bring back, if they can bring him back at this point. So with Indy being a bottom tier team, I think the line's fair, and I want to lay it with the Giants. I actually think it probably should be closer to 7.
Very, very interesting. Mikey, let me come to you because there's so much just teams that are clogged together. And this is going to be one of the situations, as RJ already said, with Philadelphia and Dallas in those games in Week 18. This week means everything to lead into that. What do you think happens in this one?
Yeah, I think the Giants ultimately win the game. As far as the line, I understand where it's at. You know, the number was 3. It's moved to 5 after last night's performance. I can't necessarily disagree with that. From a computer standpoint, they're going to make the teams 2.5 points difference to 3 points difference here. You know, if I had to play it, it would probably be a Colts +5 play at this point, but I'm not going to play it here. Considering the quarterback situation, I don't think there's going to be a lot of motivation here on the Indianapolis side. Indy's defense is fine. It's actually a very good defensive unit. So that's the only thing that would keep me believing in Indy enough to cover this kind of a number here at this point. But I can't get anywhere. These teams rate 25th and 27th for me in the NFL. Not good teams at this point. So, you know, if you want to play it, go for it. I think the Giants win the game. Do they cover the spread? Potentially cover it late or potentially run away with it. I think they ultimately get the job done at home in terms of winning the game, but not a team that I want to be backing too often here.
I love when you guys are nice to these teams and what you really want to say about this atrocious play as of late with some of them. All right. Game number 6 at 1:00 on a Sunday. And this game has a lot to play for both teams. The Saints all of the sudden are now very much alive for a playoff spot in the NFC South, despite the fact that they are, let me just remind everybody, they are 6-9, but just one game back of the top spot that the Buccaneers have at 7-8. Now, the Eagles on the other side, RJ, they need to win at least one game to secure the number 1 seed. They didn't do that last week in Dallas, so they have 2 more chances. So they have a ton to play for. Laying 7, total 44. Your thoughts?
This is ticked up to 7. It was, I believe, 6. Good. It was a good day for Minshew versus Dallas, but turnovers are a problem. I think that move is maybe Jalen Hurts plays. We'll see if he's healthy enough to play this week, and if he does, then the line makes sense there at 7. This was an awful day for the Philly defense too. They are generally elite versus the pass and struggle versus the run, and they did the opposite here. They had played well versus the run in this game, and they got lit up by Dak Prescott in the pass. New Orleans offense 6th in pass yards per play, kind of sneakily pretty good passing the ball. So it's not really that much easier of a test for Philly here. If there's something fundamentally wrong with their pass defense they need to fix, this isn't going to be any easier of a test. New Orleans defense 4th in pass yard per play and 7th in sack rate. Where that sack rate comes in key is Lane Johnson suffered an injury. He's not going to play in this game. He might not play again this season. That really downgrades Philly's offensive line. He's a true difference maker, probably the best right tackle in the league. Look ahead was -5.5. I think the only reason you make it higher than that after a key injury like the Lane Johnson injury is because you think Hurts might be coming back. So we'll see if he comes back. But if he doesn't, and especially if Chris Olave is able to play and the Saints have a number 1 receiver they can trust, with Shaheed kind of backing him up as the number 2 instead of having to play number 1, I think Saints are likely the right side. So if we get some positive news on Olave and it looks like Hurts is trending out, I'm going to be looking Saints.
Okay. And speaking of the Saints, Mikey, as we look to their kind of path to potentially make the playoffs, they are very much a live dog because they play this week. Panthers play the Bucs. We're going to get to that game next. And then they've got the Panthers next week. So they could see a scenario where they could need to beat the Panthers to get in, but this week they got to get it done. How do they beat the Eagles?
Through excellent defense, a little bit of Taysom Hill, and just really managing the ball in this game, managing possession of the ball. They got to turn over Minshew if it's going to be Minshew playing. It's a tough task for the Saints at this point. I can't say that I necessarily agree with the market movement unless Jalen Hurts is definitely going to play and feel fine in this game. I don't think that he plays personally, so I make the game 6. You want to make it up to 7, go for it. I think there's a little bit of value on the Saints side in keeping it close. I think it's a game that could be very, very competitive, where the Eagles have a drive to solidify the win at the end here. But I'll lean towards the Saints with the points. At this point, not going to be overly excited about taking anything in this game. Slight lean towards the under as well. I think this game should be around 41.5, 42.
All right, very good. A couple of values, a little bit of value there on the under. All right, that's 6 of the 9 games so far at 1 o'clock. So we are moving right along. Thank you to all of you who are watching on YouTube or listening on Apple or Spotify. This is the Early Edge NFL Week 17 Mega Preview. Now, this next game, and Mikey, I'm starting with you because you like a side here. Now, if there's one thing that I have learned working with this crew the last couple of years, that you can't just say, well, this team did this last week and this will happen. I just learned that with this same Panthers team 2 weeks ago when the Steelers went in, beat them. Mike, you were on, and I was like, is he crazy? No, I've learned. So the obvious side, based off of what we saw last week, is the Panthers. But tell me why that's not the side that you like, Mikey.
Yeah, it's just a tough spot for them, right? They've played well in a couple of these games, not playing great teams, in my opinion. Now you get to go play in Tom's house for the division here, right? Great spot to back the Bucs, in my opinion. If you'd looked at this line even, say, 2.5 weeks ago, probably would have been -6.5 for Tampa, -5.5 for sure. Earlier in the season on the look ahead, when McCaffrey's traded, this thing's over 10. Massive value here on the Bucs, considering they're on their home field. This number is implying that these two teams are basically identical in terms of strength and power rating. I'm not ready to agree with that just yet. I liked a lot of what I saw. Obviously, the Bucs were able to get the win. Tom played pretty terrible in that game on the road. However, Leonard Fournette played incredibly well there. They still got all the weapons. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are both healthy. I'm pretty impressed with that part of it. They've still got all the weapons intact. So all you need is Tom Brady to have one decent game here. Even in a game that's not his best, we know that they're going to play competitive the way that they play. I think they can slow down the run game just enough here. So I like the Bucs here. Best bet, -3. I think it's a gift. I can't see any world where this line's less than 4.5.
Yeah, we've got to remember that Tom Brady historically loves these kind of spots when the lights are the brightest and there's everything on the line. That's when he starts to play well. That's where he starts to play well. RJ, let me come to you because Mikey just said it. He thinks they can slow down the run game just enough. Well, last week, the Lions couldn't, but they have a horrendous run defense. The Bucs have a very good run defense. So is Sam Darnold going to beat the Bucs through the air? I mean, that's the question. So I'll ask you that.
Yeah, the Bucs, they have had a better run defense in the past. It hasn't been as great this year. Their pass defense has actually been really good, especially when guys are healthy there. Carolina offense coming off their peak performance. Can't expect them to play like that. Carolina was winless on the road before a win in Seattle in week 14. So I don't know if I trust them going on the road either. And forget a few weeks ago talking about what was this line. This line was look ahead was 7 last week. And it seems like the market might finally be giving up on Tampa Bay. But there is one thing to note. Somebody tweeted, one of the Bucs beat reporters said, on the pick to Evans, Brady walked off the field right in front of me with a bad limp. And he just replied as we were doing the show. He spent time with a trainer getting treatment after the game, something to watch this week. So we'll see if that affects him throughout the week and see if maybe that's where some of the adjustment has come in. Is Brady a questionable for this game? Is he going to end up with a questionable tag by the time we get to Friday? I don't know. We'll have to check how the practice reports go and if there is anything there. That would be my only concern with that. Otherwise, I am probably on the Mikey side here. I'm actually hoping the line tips toward Carolina because it looks like it's a soft 3 for Tampa, and I might get down to 2.5. And if that happens, and if it looks like Brady's going to play, I want to be on that side. So I'll back Tampa in that situation.
Yeah. With everything on the line, playoff spots and all that, I'll put my money on Brady too. Sorry, Sam Darnold. Sorry, Deontay Foreman. Sorry, Panther fans. All right, game number 8 at 1 o'clock on Sunday. And Washington, here's their scenario. If they lose one of their final 2 games, they've got the Browns at home, and then they have the Cowboys, both games at home. But if they lose even one, that opens a door for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So Commanders are laying 2, total 40.5. And RJ, you have this as one of your teaser legs. Start us off.
Yeah, I'm going to tease the Browns up to +8, pair them with Miami to have those two going through teaser alley. Again, the 3, 4, 6, 7, get them up to +8. I liked it at better at 2.5, which is what it was. It's now ticked down to 2 because I think the Browns might be a little bit frisky in this game. The offense might finally come alive. That offense has scored only 3 offensive touchdowns in 4 games with Watson at quarterback, and just keep on waiting for him to progress. But that first game was a throwaway, knocking off the rust. Hadn't played in 2 years. Didn't expect him to do anything there. And then he's had tough matchups and conditions the last 3 games at Cincy for that next game. And then he's had to play in some weather against a great Baltimore defense. And then last week, he just kind of throw out what happened offensively with those teams in that massive win game last week. I think Cleveland should be able to run on Washington, and Cleveland's pass D and the Washington pass D just got torched by Brock Purdy. I think Deshaun Watson's probably more talented than Brock Purdy. He hasn't shown that so far this year, but I think he's a little bit due for a step forward. I also downgrade the Washington offense if they are in fact turning back to Carson Wentz, which they did in the middle of that game against San Francisco. I don't think they've announced who's starting this week, but if it's Carson Wentz, I think that's a downgrade for the offense considering how he played earlier in the year. I think this is finally a spot for Watson's first quality game, but I think we're getting value here on Cleveland, and you can see the market has ticked down on them. So I like teasing it up, and I'm probably going to play the Browns straight too.
Yeah, RJ, they most definitely have not announced their starter yet because Ron Rivera went into his press conference today, and he said something I've never heard a head coach say before. He goes, I'll let you guys know. The players. I'm going to ask the players. They should have a voice in who starts for us this week. I've never heard that publicly before, asking the team.
Yeah, well, then congrats to Taylor Heineke for starting next week's game, because I don't see how any player wants Carson Wentz in that offense.
I agree. It's just crazy. Mikey, let me come to you. RJ's right. I mean, I think the whole team will say Taylor Heineke was just one of those. He had a bad game, but he has become the heart, and they feed off of him. Do you think that Ron Rivera, in any scenario, says, Carson Wentz, you're my guy?
I mean, I definitely think there's a chance if they went to him in that spot. But the thing that we have to remember is it's not that they went to him in that spot. We talked about it on the show that they said they were going to go to him in that spot if things weren't going well. So that was obviously something that was predetermined before the game. It wasn't a spur of the moment reaction kind of move. So yeah, I definitely think there's a chance that Wentz gets the call again. As far as where to play this game, I think RJ's dead on here. I think it's a perfect teaser candidate with the Browns. We always love to tease these numbers at 2, 1.5. This is a great spot for it. So that's really all I could get to. I would probably start this game on an under at 40.5, and then potentially look for a live over if possible. That's kind of the way that I see this one going. I think it's going to be a lower scoring competitive game, probably gets up close to that number 36.5 to 37. It's got 20-17 kind of written all over it here. If you want to jump on it, I think it's fine, but I think there are better situations this week for sure.
Okay, there is no doubt about it. We will remind you, or I will remind you on Sunday, where you need to stay away, where you don't, because you guys have a tendency to forget in the next 5 days. I'm talking about the people at home. All right, last game at 1 o'clock on Sunday. And if I would have told you, gentlemen, 2 months ago that Jacksonville would control their own destiny in Week 17, you probably would have said, what, for the number 1 pick? But oh no, alas, they are in line and playing like a playoff team. Huge comeback against Dallas has now positioned them this week going to Houston, taking on the Texans, laying 4 on the road, total 43.5. Mikey, let me start with you. Trevor Lawrence is playing good football. They're figuring out a way they can come back. They're playing from in front. They're playing gritty, tough games. They're winning every way that you can. But now they're staring down the barrel of the playoffs. This changes everything. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this one's also difficult because it falls in the category of where you really have to track the motivation here. Tennessee plays on Thursday night against Dallas. If Tennessee loses this game, not a ton. Their game against Dallas, where they're -10 or +10 home dogs. There's not a ton to play for Jacksonville. It all comes down to a Week 18 showdown at home against the Titans, one that they're going to want to make sure everyone is healthy and ready to go for. If you remember over the last few weeks, specifically in the rain game at the Jets, we talked about the injury report with Trevor Lawrence having the toe injury. It's kind of a nagging toe injury. That kind of stuff doesn't really go away when you're playing so aggressively on it week after week after week. It wouldn't shock me if we see him rest a little bit in this particular spot and they rest some starters. I don't think Tennessee's beating Dallas on Thursday night. If Tennessee does beat Dallas on Thursday night, there's a little bit more of motivation to go in there. Look, I think that this number could get down to 3.5 potentially. I think the number, if it was a game where they had to play and they wanted to go in and play it no matter what, I think the line should be 6.5 in this spot. Just another one that I'm certainly not going to jump on it before Thursday because I don't think that there is a ton of motivation at this point here.
But on the flip side, RJ, speaking of motivation, the Texans have been playing hard. 3 weeks ago, they played hard and almost beat – who was the team 3 weeks ago? I'm drawing a blank right now. Before Dallas. The Chiefs. Oh, no, it's Dallas, Chiefs. Then last week they beat the Titans. Yeah. So last 3 weeks, they played really, really well, and they beat Tennessee by 5 last week. So would you think that Texans +4 would be a live dog or potentially into a teaser situation?
We'll see if they are motivated, but they did finally get their win. They kind of proved that they're not just going to close the season with it, all those losses in a row. And if they get one more win, they're going to risk losing the number 1 pick to Chicago. So do they even want to win another game? Houston has won 9 straight against Jacksonville, including as 7-point underdogs in October. Jacksonville's defense 25th in pass yards per play. So Houston not being able to run the ball, which we saw last week, may not matter. They might be able to throw the ball here. Jacksonville's offense has been hot. They only scored 19 on Thursday, but bad weather and against elite defense. I'm not worried about that. I am worried about the rest factor that Mikey's talking about, though. And what he's talking about there is that if Tennessee wins, then Jacksonville will want to win because otherwise a tie in week 18 would mean that they retroactively should have won this game and they should have tried in this game. And how much more awful can you feel if you don't try in 1 week and then it ends up deciding your season down the road because of a weird thing that you never thought was going to happen. So I think I still like playing Jacksonville at -4. I think they do have to play. They don't want to get out of rhythm for that game. But they might be a better play in the first half in case the starters don't play the full game. And we see like a preseason type of game where people sit after halftime. So if you are going to play Jacksonville, I would recommend probably the first half play.
See, I think you bring up a really, really good point. Mike, did you have something? Mikey?
Oh, no, I was going to mention that. I think that they could play like 2 series or something like that to just have that rhythm of their body going through a game week and the preparation be there. But it would not shock me at all. So be very, very careful unless you're blindly betting unders.
Yeah, and you're going to have to. And they're going to have to prepare as if they're starting too, because they won't know, like you said, until after Thursday night. So that's 2 practices. The first 2 practices of the week, the starters have to prepare as if they're going all out. And then maybe you can pivot on Friday, but still, then you're putting the backups in with not as much preparation, to off that one practice. So we'll see what they do at that point.
Well, luckily, they have a really smart head coach now, and it's not a year ago when they would have had been, hey, Urban, what are you doing? No. Doug Peterson's solid. He is solid. All right, those are all of the 1 o'clock games on Sunday. By the way, Gator Base OA says, hey, Coach, I just watched a TikTok of you telling the story of the Big Show weigh-in and 630 beers. Awesome story, and animation was great. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. True story. Every bit of it was true. 483 legit pounds was the Big Show back in the day. Now, there will be no 483-pound men playing in Vegas on Sunday, but there'll be a lot of big men playing in Vegas because the 49ers bring their awesome defense to town. They bring Brock Purdy to town. He's become the toast of the town in San Francisco, and they're laying 6 against the Raiders, who continue to figure out a way to blow it. Total 44.5. RJ, let's start with you. The 49ers are playing with momentum. They're winning in all kinds of different ways. They cannot get to the number 1 seed, but they can finish very, very high. My question to you is this. If they continue to play well, do you see Purdy being the starting quarterback in January if they have a couple to choose from?
If it's between him and Garoppolo and he keeps winning, I think you have to stick with him. I will correct you. They could get the number 1 seed. I believe there's only like a 2% chance. But if they win out and they get some help from Philly and a little bit of help from Minnesota, I believe they can still win it. So they're going to be trying in this game. This line does seem inflated, but San Francisco's had no trouble covering spreads with Purdy. I did mark them down initially when he started. He came into the game because we didn't know what to expect from him. At this point, I just had to pull the ripcord and put them above where I had them with Garoppolo at the helm, because he's just played too well and the team has responded with them. So I have them as a top 5 team right now. I think their elite run defense takes away Vegas' offensive strength, but they also only allowed over 275 pass yards once all year in that game against Kansas City. So it's not like they give up a ton of pass yards either. And their offense had 6 yards per play against a good Washington defense, even without that big McLeod touchdown that went for 71 yards. You take that out and it's exactly 6 yards on the nose, 300 yards and 50 plays. So Vegas defense had benefited from weaker opposition lately, and that's why they've looked pretty solid. But they are 30th in sack rate and interception rate overall. I think this line makes sense if San Francisco was valued the same before Jimmy G's injury. And like I said, I made that adjustment on my end, and I've gotten to that point with Purdy. But you're talking about motivation. Here's the factor here. If Philly does beat New Orleans earlier in the day, and that game is a 1 o'clock game, then San Francisco can't get the bye. And so the motivation there is, do you want to go all out to get the number 2 seed and potentially have a home game against the Vikings? Or do you want to rest some starters, not play the full game, not risk injury? What's your trade-off there? So if Shanahan's calculus is, I want players to stay healthy, maybe you don't get full effort in the second half of this game, or maybe they take their foot off the gas a little. So that's my one worry with playing San Francisco here.
Yeah, very interesting. And the Vikings have a little bit of a tough road. They're going to Lambeau. We're going to get to that game in a second. So the number 2 seed, very much in play for the 49ers. Now, Mikey, I did an interview last week, and I used the stat that you gave me for it was ESPN radio somewhere. And I said the Raiders, if they would have won every game they led in the first half or at halftime, whatever the stat was, they'd have been 10-4. Then what do? They go out and do the exact same thing again. They have the game won in Pittsburgh, and then they give it away with less than 20 seconds to go in the game. What do we do with this?
Yeah, this one's tough. There is a shot that they could have the 1 seed, 2 seed, obviously, for sure. And it's not, it's very improbable, but certainly not impossible, considering we don't know the status of Jalen Hurts for the Eagles. Minnesota in a very, very tough game against Green Bay. Who knows what they end up getting into there. So I like the 49ers to ultimately win the game. I do think that they try. However, I also think that they limit snaps in some certain situations. We actually saw it against Washington a little bit, in my opinion, with Christian McCaffrey. Davis Price, the running back, he actually ended up getting 9 carries in that game. Some of them in spots where we would have expected McCaffrey to be in there when the game was not necessarily ever in doubt or in question, but certainly not impossible for a comeback the other way. So it was very interesting to see McCaffrey losing a little bit of work in those situations. I think Shanahan is smart, certainly playing for the postseason. Yes, wants to go out and win, and I think they ultimately still win this game. Not going to shock me if we see a backdoor cover. I make the number on it 7. They probably end up covering, potentially running away with it. But again, the Raiders, they have one of the worst coaches, if not the worst active coach in the NFL. But the team itself is not as bad as their record. Certainly not as bad as their record playing at home. So I like the 49ers as a money line leg. If you wanted to pair it with something else, I don't love playing the against the spread number here, as I don't think there's a ton of motivation to run it up.
One of my best friends in the whole world has coached in the NFL for several years, and he has said on several occasions, including less than a week ago, Kyle Shanahan is the best coach in the NFL. When you take everything into account, offensive play calling, taking care of his players, getting them out when people aren't even realizing they're not playing, that's how good Kyle Shanahan has been as a head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see what happens this week in Las Vegas, inside the dome, in a controlled environment. Now, there's another team that still has mathematically a chance, or 2 teams, and they play each other in Seattle, late 4:05 on Sunday. The Jets are laying 2.5, and they're laying 2.5, gentlemen, and we know that Mike White has been cleared. We don't know whose backup's going to be, and that's important because the Jets have rarely made it through a game where they haven't used a backup. Total 42.5. Mikey, let's start with you. The Seahawks also have a chance to make the playoffs. They'd have to win out and get a little bit of help. But this week has been all about the Jets and benching Zach Wilson. He won't even be active, and Mike White getting the start again.
Yeah, this one is tough. I think the Jets probably find a way to steal this game. Computer's going to tell you to back Seattle. It should be a pick 'em in this spot. You probably take the 2.5 points. I think it's an okay teaser leg as well. Basically a textbook teaser here, 2.5 up to 8.5. Pair it with something else you like, whether it's Cleveland or any of the other games that we've talked about. I have some concerns on the Seattle side for sure. Number one, the Jets defense is absolutely legit. Seattle's offense certainly banged up here. Now going to be without one of the tackles most likely as well. It's a tough spot, but it's a spot where they can rally. They're at home. There's a pretty big home field advantage playing in Seattle. Pretty big travel spot overall for the Jets. Pretty much as bad as it gets in the NFL in terms of the travel situation. So I'm going to lean towards Seattle here. Might end up teasing it, but I do worry that Mike White's able to go in and steal one here because the Seahawks are pretty beat up.
Yeah, they're beat up, and we have seen that they don't at times play very good defense in the air. And we've seen, RJ, that Mike White, he can throw it, he can sling it, and he can get over 300 yards any week. And we also saw how tough he was when he played against your Bills. Are you leaning Jets this week?
I think I'm leaning Jets. Yeah, getting White back caused the line to move 3.5 points, and I think that considering he's not a great quarterback, he's better than Zach Wilson. We know the team responds better to him, but I don't know if you should move the line that much. So there might be some Seattle, lean to Seattle buzz there. This is a long travel spot for the Jets. The last 3 times they've had to go to Seattle, they've scored a total of 13 points. Of course, that was much different offenses, different coaches, everything, but it's just a testament to that's just a tough travel spot for them. They are getting extra rest. They played last Thursday. So they're going to get extra rest on a day where in a week where a lot of people had weird schedules because of Christmas. They didn't have to deal with any of that. They got their game out of the way Thursday. Seattle's offense struggled against good Carolina and San Francisco defenses at home before no showing against Kansas City. It does feel like Seattle's defense has crashed after a good run mid-season. It feels like they've been terrible, but they did only give up 21 points to San Francisco, who just routed Washington. They only gave up 24 to Kansas City, and like I said, Mahomes did not have a good completion percentage in that game. So it's not like they're playing terrible on defensive side. They're actually doing a little bit better than I kind of thought they were once I looked into the numbers. I don't think there's too much value in the spread. I would lean to the Jets, but I agree that Seattle is a solid teaser leg. Only one Jets game has gone over 41 points since week 5, and that was when they were at Minnesota. I mean, this situation, I trust their defense. I think you look to the under. I think it's actually come down a full point. So I'm mad I didn't get it a little earlier, but at 42.5, I still lean to the under.
Yeah, it's just at 42.5. Seems like there are a ton of teams sitting at 7 and 8. Just feels like there's a lot of teams sitting at 7 and 8. The next 2 teams we talk about have everything to play for. And RJ, I'm going to start with you. The Vikings are just 1 game back of the Eagles for that top seed and the bye in the NFC, 12-3, and they've had some incredible wins. The Packers, they've been the talk of the NFL the last 3 weeks, starting to get it going, starting to get that offense going. Here's what the Packers need. They need either the Giants to lose both games or the Commanders to lose one, because Seattle and the Lions, if the Packers went out, they would win the tiebreaker against Seattle, and they would have a better record than the Lions because they play them in Week 18. So all we need to worry about is the Giants and the Commanders if you're a Packers fan. RJ, your thoughts on this huge NFC North matchup?
Yeah, it's another down game for Minnesota's defense against Giants offense that typically doesn't pass well, but threw the ball all over Minnesota. And that Aaron Rodgers can accomplish the same thing here. I actually expected more from Green Bay's offense against Miami. That got kind of gifted that game in the second half with what we expect to be a head injury for Tua based on, reviewing the clips of where he might have injured himself now that he's in concussion protocol. So it might have been gifted there. I don't think their defense is playing that well, even with the 3 picks, because they were just kind of right on the money. Didn't have to do too much for them. But they still gave up too many big plays in the first half, and I think the Packers can get some big plays here, and the Vikings can get some big plays with Justin Jefferson if they need it. The power ratings say this is a fair line. Minnesota is just 5-10 against the spread in their last 15 games at Green Bay. They haven't played outdoors since their win over Buffalo in Week 10. They've had 5 home games and 1 road game. The road game was in Detroit, so they're not used to playing outdoors. They really haven't had to deal with this weather. But that Buffalo game was in similar conditions, and we all remember what happened there. They came back. They beat the Bills in overtime somehow in that game. But they actually haven't played that many outdoor games late in the season with Cousins. They had 2 last year, and their offense struggled in both. But typically, they somehow are able to miss these terrible weather spots. So I think they could also pull their starters at some point if Philly beats New Orleans and they can't get the 1 seed. Do they try all out for this game? I don't know. I laid Green Bay at -3. I put it in on the site at -3 at 3.5 now. I'm still leaning that way. I don't like it as much. I would lean to the total if not for that Minnesota factor. of them not playing outdoors a ton. But the number has gone up, I believe, on the total. So I'm probably leaning that way too.
Yeah, they started to play a little bit faster. They still play slower than I would like, but now that their offense is going, I feel like Aaron has talked to coaches and, hey, let's play a little bit faster. Now, Mikey, does it concern you? Because Christian Watson, we were on his yardage prop, and he was at 49 at halftime, and then just didn't come out to play in the second half because he got injured. I've not heard anything yet. Maybe you guys have, but does it concern you at all on the Packers side if Christian Watson does not play?
I mean, you definitely want him to be out there. I think that honestly, Rodgers maybe looks his way a little bit too much early. So I think that it's good having to go back to Lazard just a touch there. But yeah, I'm not going to say it's good that he's not going to be on the field. I expect him to suit up and play for this game. It's going to be great. I like the Packers in the spot. I think it's the only way to look in the game. You can still find a -3 at -120. I would not pay -125. Would not go above that, but you can find the -120 at -3 still out there. I think it's a pretty good look. I make the number 4 in this game. One thing I love about Aaron Rodgers here is he's still a great game manager. It's frustrating to some if you're betting props, betting totals, whatever it may be, unless you're betting unders, of course. He's great at working the clock. Mahomes is pretty good at it as well, but so is Aaron Rodgers. And I think that in this particular spot at home, one of the best home field advantages in the NFL, especially this late in the year. I think the Packers keep the dream alive and keep it rolling here. Got both running backs healthy. Aaron Jones didn't play a ton of snaps. A.J. Dillon was fantastic once again, always really is. He's just so hard to tackle, especially in an outdoor environment like this. I'm very worried about Minnesota's defense in this matchup and just playing outdoors where they are. And then for your trend bettors out there and those that like the fun stats and streaks, Matt LaFleur, I believe, is 15-0 in December with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said, yeah, Packers just don't lose in December. There you go. You were right.
Guess when this game is being played?
January
1st.
Oh, you got me, Mikey. You got me. You got me.
That's why I like the stat, because it's one day. Do they suck in January, or I don't know. They're preparing for it in December, so who knows?
Have you seen them in the playoffs?
Very true. Very, very true. It was like that stat with Tom Brady after 6:30, like games after 6:30, and the Super Bowl starts at 6:20. You got me there. All right, now this next game, and I'm looking at the total. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, and Mikey, I'm going to start with you, because the Fighting Baker Mayfields last week before the game, the announcer said, we talked to Baker Mayfield. He said he wants to show the world for the next 3 weeks at the time that he is a legitimate starter in the NFL. What did they do? They went out there and laid 51 in the Nickelodeon game where SpongeBob and everybody else was making fun of Russ just like we were. Now, they're motivated. They want to play. The Chargers have already clinched a playoff spot. They're laying 6.5, though. Mikey, let's start with you because I can't remember who I said. Let's start with you. I'm leaning Rams, and I'm leaning over. You?
I'll lean to the over for sure. I think the number should be 43.5. So that's probably the best look in this game. I do think they're going to be able to move the ball just enough. Sure, Baker definitely an audition for future work for him. As far as the number in the game, I am tempted to lay it with the Chargers. I think the number should be 7 to 7.5. I don't necessarily agree with the 6.5 that is showing here at this point. Very curious to see what RJ's thoughts are on it, though. I do find it interesting that we're not making this strong enough to be a 7. I get that it's not a true home field advantage when they home road game. Obviously, these two teams share a building here. So that being said, I still think the number should be a full 7 to 7.5. So I think market is – I don't know what the market's trying to tell us here other than let's bet the over at 41.
Well, I wonder if it's this, RJ, and maybe I'm reaching here. But since the Chargers have already clinched a playoff spot and they can't win the division, they're going to be a wild card team regardless. Do we think maybe they won't play everybody, and maybe that has been built into the number so far?
I think that has something to do with it. Yes, the look ahead was -9, and the Rams blowing out a bad Denver team that just fired their coach does not warrant this big of a move on its own. Because the Rams, you could think they're for real. They had a terrible game before that one. Again, the Denver game there. I know Baker's played well, but they're still decimated injury wise. They're not going to have Aaron Donald back in this game, I assume. I don't know why he would play. So it's still going to be a tough look for the Rams. I think if this was a true home road game, Chargers should be 11. You take away the home field advantage, it should be around 9. I agree with the look ahead, but there is that mitigating motivation factor. Now, there still is a chance they still want to play for the 5 seeds. That's the thing. Like, do they go all out for that 5 seed? Because you want to avoid the top 3 of the AFC, and you want to get that matchup against the AFC South winner, probably the Jaguars or the Titans, it looks like. Probably the Jaguars. So we'd much rather play them than the Bengals or the Ravens, as the 3 seed, or the Bills, or whoever it ends up being. So Rams defense better defending the run in the pass. Chargers not likely to run much, so that doesn't matter that much there. Chargers offense should be able to operate. Chargers defense has been playing better over the last 3 weeks, so I think there is a good sense that the Rams offense could pinball back to a bad game there. So I would lean in with the Chargers here at -6.5. Kind of want to see motivation factor if they say anything about that, but I believe the line should be on the other side of 7.
Thank you, RJ, for finally pointing out something I used to argue with people at ESPN all the time, because I would bring that up. I'd say, well, if they're the 4 seed, then if they play the 5 or 6 for the championship, they'd get a home. And I'm doing and they're like, oh, none of that could happen. That would take like a 10% chance, but it could happen. And if it does, you want to have either a home game or against a team not as strong as the Bills, the Chiefs, or whoever. I don't know why they don't talk about it. Mike, you got something?
Oh, yeah, I just agree completely. You'd much rather play the Jaguars than Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincy, or Buffalo, depending on how it all shakes out.
No doubt about it. You got to think about that kind of stuff. All right. Now, Sunday Night Football. And this one is so important. Now, the Ravens are somehow, I don't even know how they got to 10 wins, to be honest with you. I guess I've been sleeping on them, but they are already into the playoffs, despite the fact that Lamar Jackson has missed several games and doesn't look to be coming back anytime soon, I don't think. Ravens laying 3, though, against the Steelers, who big comeback to keep their playoff hopes alive. Total 36. Mikey, let's start with you. How impressed have you been with the Steelers playing Steeler football? They're not pretty, but they're gutty. How impressed?
Yeah, I mean, they're playing gutty football. They're matched up with a team that does the exact same thing in the Baltimore Ravens here, and the Baltimore Ravens typically do it just a little bit better. As far as Lamar, we'll see if he's coming back here in this spot or if they continue to hold him out. You're playing for seeding a little bit here, obviously. You're not playing for a ton other than that. You're locked into the playoffs, which is the most important thing here for them. So I don't know that we see Lamar in this one. I still think that they should be closer to 4-point home favorites, not 3. I think this number probably moves to 3.5 throughout the week. We'll see if we're right on that or not, or what kind of news we get surrounding Lamar Jackson. But being on their home field in this spot, I think that they're still the better team here and should be able to manage the game. Yes, the Steelers, emotional spot. They came back against the Raiders. Everybody comes back against the Raiders. Great for them. I still think they have an excellent weapon in Justin Tucker. They're able to manage this game. So if I had to play it, I would lay the 3 with the Ravens at this point in the week.
It's a nice game to have as a standalone because you really don't know what's going to happen. And maybe if you have a good day all day on Sunday, you can just play what your heart tells you. But the total is at a very eerie 36, RJ, because these two teams, they could go into the 40s or they could play 13-9. What do you think the game script will look like?
Yeah, if I had to lean on the total, I'd lean over just because it's so low. Pittsburgh defense's big game was expected against Carr in the cold, but they couldn't stop the Baltimore run game in Week 14. And Baltimore's rush offense has averaged almost 200 yards over the last 3 games. They're playing at an elite level running the ball. Baltimore's defense 3rd in rush yards per play and 2nd on 3rd down. Those are some of the strengths of the Pittsburgh offense. So if you take away those strengths and force Pickett to throw the ball, they might not be able to score a ton of points. Baltimore unlucky to score 3 at Cleveland, had those rare Tucker miss and a block. They were inside field goal range 5 times in that game, came away with only 3 points because of the field goal luck and then some turnovers. I think one was on downs, one was a turnover. So they're actually played fine in that game despite the 3 points. Their only other loss since Week 6 was by 1 on the road to a surging Jacksonville team that won it at the very end of the game. So they are playing well. You talk about weighted DVOA. I don't talk about Football Outsiders DVOA that much, but they are a much, much better team than Pittsburgh in terms of weighted DVOA because they haven't actually been playing pretty well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. There is a possibility Lamar is back here. It seemed like the line wanted to say that he could come back last week with where they put it. So I'm not writing off that he's back. They have plenty to play for in this game. The next night after this game, the Bengals are playing the Bills. And if the Bills beat the Bengals and Bills are 1-point favorites, like we'll talk about in a second, then the Ravens are allowed to win the division. Though if they win here, they'll be tied for the division playing at Cincinnati in that final week. So I think they want to go out, play well in that game, and go into Cincinnati with some momentum, trying to win the division there. So I think they're gonna have a good chance of winning this game. At -3, I like it. The problem is that it looks like it might tip the other way to the 2.5. And if you're gonna give me 2.5 in that game, I'm definitely gonna play Baltimore.
Ooh, you're darn right about that. I love the fact, Mikey, go.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I love the fact that a few years ago, because remember, it wasn't that long ago where you could have Dallas playing Jacksonville in week 18 and it didn't, or week 17, it just didn't matter. Now every game in week 18 is a divisional matchup, every single one, and it makes it so much better and so much more interesting and exciting and fun.
And the other thing about that is you get that one flex into week 18 Sunday Night Football, the one thing that decides everything. Would really hope that we get Ravens Bengals and it's not Titans Jaguars. Don't put the Titans in prime time. Give me some Bengals Ravens, please.
Please. Just like we said, please give us a Monday night game in week 17 that means so much. And gentlemen, we have it. You cannot ask for a better game to end week 17 than what we have. The number 1 seed up for grabs. So, I mean, it's in play. Then you got divisions in play. Everything in play. The Bills are laying 1. The Bengals nearly blew it last week, but they still got it done in New England. So the Bills are your team, RJ. So I'm going to start with you. Should they be favored by 1 on the road?
I don't think they should, and it's not because the Bills are playing badly. They've been the number 1 seed for much of the season, and they finally looked like it at Chicago. They hadn't really had a definitive game like that, but they actually looked the part finally at Chicago. So I was happy to see that. Since he collapsed in the second half for once, typically they make great adjustments, especially defensively at halftime, and then come out and play strong in the second half. But the opposite happened there. Buffalo's offense has elite pass game. They are actually now number 1 in rush yards per play as well, and they're number 1 on third down too. So they do a lot well offensively. It's going to be a very tough test for Cincy. Cincy's offense, not that much of a threat in the run game, and I think it's tough to beat Buffalo's defense without both a run and pass threat. But we have seen those games where Mixon pops in the past, so maybe they can get that going. But the thing for me is Cincinnati is 12-1 against the spread in the last 13 games, and they've won most of those outright. I don't think they should be dogs at home to anyone, even if it's a point. I would make this line pick them at worst. I could argue for Cincy -1. That's why I'm leaning to Cincy here, and if it ends up getting up back to 1.5, love Cincy as a teaser leg as well.
Love that as a teaser leg. And Mikey, let me come to you because the Bengals have won 7 in a row, and they've won it in completely different ways. But the one thing they need to happen is to be able to throw the ball because that's their strength with their all-pro quarterback. Do you think they'll be able to throw the ball? I haven't even looked at the weather yet. We'll talk about it Monday night on Early Edge Live, but can they throw the ball against this Buffalo team?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they can. They're going to have to. RJ mentioned the run game, their lack thereof for Cincinnati. They're going to still try to run the ball a little bit, but I don't think they're going to have a ton of success. Mixon's going to be very important in the game, in the passing game. As far as the number, I personally think the number is about right. It should be a pick 'em. It's going to bounce to -1 or +1, depending on which side you're on. Throughout the week here, most likely. I think it's a fantastic live betting opportunity as well. I definitely expect a back and forth game. Whoever's in possession of the ball is going to be favored -1.5 to -2.5 at all times. So you're going to be able to pick off little numbers in game if you want to go that route. I think it's an incredibly tough test for Cincinnati. And what I'm worried about with Cincinnati is they looked really good when they had the ball handed to them against Tampa Bay. They looked really bad in the first half of Tampa Bay. They almost fell apart against the Patriots. We haven't seen them put 4 quarters together, and they haven't needed to put 4 quarters together in the last few weeks. They should likely need to put 4 quarters together to beat a Buffalo Bills team that is very, very hungry to win this game, to maintain the number 1 overall seed. They know how important that is. They do not want to visit Arrowhead or Cincinnati again in the playoffs here. It's all in. Obviously, mostly all in for Cincinnati as well, but I think it's more all in for Buffalo in this particular game. Josh Allen leaves it all on the line. He's too good, in my opinion, running the football as well. So I'm going to lean Buffalo pretty heavily in the game, but I'm going to wait to see just a little bit here where the market moves this one.
All right, C. Rad said it's going to be very mild Monday night, Coach. 50s, but perhaps some showers. Jeffrey's asking the same question I was going to ask you guys. Either one of you can take it. Did either one of you lean to the over, which currently is at 49.5?
I would, yeah. Just because I think it's an offensive game where Burrow and Allen are going to dictate what happens there. So even though Buffalo has a great defense, I think that the offense is going to want to take center stage here.
Mikey?
It's the slightest of leans. I think the number's right where it should be, personally.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. If you can believe it, we do 16 games in less than an hour with the two of the best minds in the NFL in the world, period. But it's that time of the show where we do our full recap, brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook and Casino. And we go through our best bets here on a Tuesday. Mikey, start us off, please, sir.
All right, let's start here with Tampa Bay, -3 on their home field. Look ahead on this was close to -6.5, -7. Love them in this must-win game against the Carolina Panthers. I think their defense is good enough to stop the run, limit it. Meanwhile, everyone is healthy in terms of the weapons. Fournette, Godwin, Mike Evans. Love the Bucs to roll here at home. And then we're going Patriots, -2.5 against the Dolphins. The Dolphins have fallen apart. Tua in the concussion protocol again, many calling for him to be shut down for the year. It is tough to go into Foxborough and win games at this point in the season. Love the Patriots, -2.5.
Two great best bets there. RJ, let's talk about yours.
I'm laying 5 with the Giants. It's a lot to lay with this Giants team that doesn't like to win games big, but they're playing an Indy team that looks like they're done. They don't have much left to give here. And the Giants are very well coached, and they need this win to not have to worry about the Philly game in Week 18 and make the playoffs. So I think they're going to go out and handle their business, win by 5, and then the Colts will not be able to storm back with Thibodeau, rushing the passer there. Teaser wise, I like Browns +8, Dolphins +8.5, a conventional teaser there, tease up through teaser alley. Browns +8. I think we're finally going to get a good showing from Deshaun Watson. He's had a lot of tough situations the last few weeks when he's tried to get in his rhythm, but that'll be different here against a Washington team that might be turning back to Carson Wentz at quarterback. Yuck. The Dolphins +8.5. You got Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. He's not Tua, but he's played very well whenever he's had to start, and I think he's going to be capable of getting the ball into these playmakers' hands for them. Keep that game close against an overrated Patriots team.
And those are our best bets for Week 17 in our mega preview, brought to you as always by Caesars Sportsbook and Casino. All right, we like to end every one of our shows asking my guys what's the number one most important thing they're looking to for the week. So, RJ, what is yours?
It's got to be Bills Bengals. We just talked about it. Could be for the number 1 seed. Buffalo wants to salt that away here and then hold it off because the Chiefs have not given an inch since losing that game to them earlier, and then they lost to the Bengals, and then they're still a strong team. So looking for that game. It could be a preview of the AFC Championship. Of course, the Chiefs are going to be in the mix there, but these are definitely 2 of the 3 best teams in the AFC right now.
There's no question about that. Mikey, what about you, pal?
Yeah, it's got to be the same game. It's good. Buffalo, Cincy, definitely the highlight here. We could talk about the situation with Tom Brady as well. I look for the Bucs. It's a game where they should not only just go in and cover the spread, but they should frankly really blow out that Carolina team if they're going to be for real at all this year. So watching those 2 games very closely.
And I'm also watching several teams to see who really wants to be valued as a team that could make it to the Super Bowl, like a Minnesota, like a Detroit, like a 49ers. Who's going to step up and be counted? That's who I want to see on both the NFC side of things and the AFC side of things. With 18 weeks and 17 games, there is no more excuses. If you don't make the playoffs after 17 games, then you didn't deserve it. Plain and simple. Another great hour, gentlemen. Another great hour. Hard to believe we've done 17 weeks right here on Tuesday. But with that being said, there's only one thing left to do, and I believe you all know what that is. You've got your marching orders. Let's take all of these NFL tickets straight to the pay window. My entire crew, love them all. The Stoic One, RJ White, M Squared, AB, the Snake, the Maestro will be back next week for Week 18. I am the coach. Turn on your notifications. Tell all your friends there's only one sports betting brand you even need to worry about. It's all right here at the Early Edge. Good luck.